So I want to talk about an article here from MakingStarWars.net. Jason Ward, I've in the past talked about how accurate they are when it comes to their spoilers and their information. So because of that, just letting you know that this video, let's just to be safe, this video is going to contain spoilers for Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, Episode 9. They haven't been, Making Star Wars is not right every single time, but about 95% of the time they are. And we're going to go into this article here discussing the final battle, or at least maybe not the final battle in the movie, but a huge battle in the film between Rey and Kylo Ren. So without any further ado, you've been warned. Spoilers, let's go into it. So I'm not going to read the entire article, but he discusses how, I'm going to summarize some things and quote some things, and I'll give you my thoughts on it. He discusses how we're going to see some new Force powers on display in this film. During the Episode 9 panel, they toss around the new powers, and he talks about how he was told by several sources that it was described as Force flashlights. Now, when you first hear Force flashlights, it's like, well, okay, flashlights, why is that a big deal? Like, do they is it dark? They have problems seeing at night? But no, that's not really what's going on. Basically, it has to do with some kind of environmental change. Essentially, what he says here in the article is that when Kylo and Rey fight in the film, they have the ability to change the background that they're fighting in, or possibly even teleport. So as they fight, obviously in this version of the film, or in this story of this chapter in the saga, Rey and Kylo are considerably more powerful than they were in The Last Jedi. You know, in The Last Jedi, Snoke talked about how they were increasing in power. You know, darkness rises and light to meet it. And he thought that Luke Skywalker was going to be the light that rose. He said he was wrong about that. Instead, it turned out to be Rey. Now, whether or not this film changes that remains to be seen. But either way, they're both incredibly strong. Rey has been studying the books that she took from the Jedi Temple. That was, of course, in the very end of Last Jedi. You see the books being put away. And Kylo, of course, is getting stronger with the darkness. And it talks about how as they fight, the backgrounds change to different places seen in the Star Wars saga. So they're going to be fighting, and as they fight in the background, you're going to see different locations, like, you know, Yavin, possibly Tatooine, most likely Hoth. Now it's not really specified as to whether or not this fight is, you know, if they're actually teleporting there during the fight, like something from Dragon Ball, or if it's actually like just an illusion. It's difficult to really say what they're going to do, but it's going to be visually probably a pretty crazy visual treat when you watch that in theaters. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read a section here and then give you my thoughts. He says here, Rey and Kylo clash, and as they battle, the backgrounds change to places throughout Star Wars' vast locations from the 9-part Skywalker saga. To protect sources, I cannot touch on what backgrounds pop up, and even if I did, there's no indication as to which are in the movie for sure. Because the movie's not done yet, it's still being edited, it'll be a while. And JJ can always cut things out and change things, you know, it's not over yet. He goes on to say, this could explain certain places like the Lars homestead and Ahch-To, but also might not, so it makes things even more confusing in some ways. I also don't know if every strike and clash is a new environment, or if they fight in these places at a time before moving on to the next one. We still have a lot of questions about how this will be conveyed on screen. That sounds like a good idea. My only issue with it is, you know, we don't really understand as of right now Kylo and Rey's connections to the past. You know, we know that Rey comes from nothing. That may get retconned in the film. She may end up being a Skywalker or a Palpatine. We don't know yet. Kylo, of course, is, you know, the son of Han Solo and Princess Leia, grandson of Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker. So he, of course, would have some kind of connection with them. But to our knowledge, we've never really seen Kylo in these places. You know, we haven't seen Kylo at the Lars homestead. Did he ever go there? Possibly, but I don't see why he would be there. Maybe when Luke Skywalker in the trailer says, you know, 1,000 generations are inside of you, maybe something happens where Rey and Kylo get, you know, memories of previous Jedi, and they have this like crazy Force knowledge. Maybe they tap into the life stream of the Force, the living Force, and can sense things in the past, the future, like Yoda talked about. That could be the case. He goes on to say that Here's where things get confusing and dicey for me. One source that told me about what they filmed in Jordan mentioned Kylo and his TIE fighter and Rey in a Wild West standoff. We pretty much saw that in the trailer. So the scene in the trailer where you see the TIE fighter coming at Rey, and Rey does that flip to go slice it, apparently that is Kylo. I thought it was Kylo. Some people thought it might have been the bounty hunter being portrayed by Kerry Russell, supposedly. We don't know for sure. But it looks like it is Kylo according to this leak. And he goes on to say that person also said that Rey damages the TIE, and we see Kylo walking away from the TIE in flames, which was mentioned by a BTS Real viewer. Behind the scenes, of course, what BTS stands for. This source said things get trippy when they first clash. So, and then most sources have said Rey and Kylo fight one another during these moments. Now, we're not done yet because apparently there's more fights coming. He goes on to say, I have another set of sources that have told me about the flash fights, but they said that Rey and Kylo team up against that outside threat I talked about several months ago. What he's referring to is the talk that there's going to be a third villain that appears in the film. Now, obviously, Palpatine is the number one guess. That's the number one suspect about who that could be. But where does he come from? Again, we don't know. But he does right here, the person is in a black robe and cloak. I mean, there's not many guys who wear black robes, right? Black cloaks. I assumed it was Snoke, Plagueis, and even Palpatine. Back then I was investigating Matt Smith, but no one would touch Palpatine back then which was telling, and now we know he's in the movie. These sources told me about the Death Star graveyard being back as well. So these people are being pretty accurate here with what they're telling Jason. My takeaway at this time is that Rey and Kylo do fight, and it causes them to flash around the galaxy when it happens. And again, that's crazy that they're going to teleport essentially around the galaxy. That's what it sounds like to me, you know. My speculation at the moment is that since all of these sources gave me verified information for the Rise of Skywalker, perhaps Rey and Kylo first meet, and then they flash fight for the first time. Maybe later they use his power against the resurrected Palpatine. So the final battle could be, you know, the resurrected Palpatine against Rey and Kylo, you know, the darkness and the light having to come together against the greater darkness. He goes on to say about the visual style, when you get down to it, this idea relies heavily on the execution, which I agree with. The sources I have believe in the execution of it, and they obviously worked in the film. I can see it being really cool, and I can see it being really bad, depending on which way you imagine. I think it's always better to imagine in favor of the filmmakers and try to remember that they're professionals that make everything cool that we think is cool. Well, somewhat. It just depends. Sometimes what they think is cool is lame. It just depends. He goes on to say, there's a lot of clues in the trailer about how and when things happen. Yeah, but you got to also remember they love to chop things up and fool us. A lot of that is super useful, but I just got back to California after driving from Chicago. Of course, Star Wars Celebration is what he's talking about. We think we have a pretty solid order of things from the trailer that might end up revealing if the location flashes occur more than one time in the film. But it does kind of make sense that maybe it happens the first time and then they use that later to take on Palpatine. And so I wonder, what is the benefit of using that force power? That's what I want to know. What benefit is it? He goes on to say, these kind of trippy things happen in the lead bracket draft of The Empire Strikes Back, where Luke and Vader fought amongst the stars. Yeah, Luke actually became a, quote, Skywalker. Maybe Rey and Kylo are going to literally walk in the sky. Maybe they're going to fly. I hate to say it, but if I see Rey and Kylo flying, I don't know. That might be too much for me. I don't know. I mean, then again, the Force can do anything. And we saw Leia do it, so why can't they do it, right? He goes on to say, Star Wars Rebels dabbled in the implications of the visuals Lee Brackett laid down, and feels like perhaps J.J. Abrams and Chris Terrio decided to make things trippy in their own way and take the Force back style into the fight. We still have a lot to learn about what it's going to look like, but for now I'm only reporting on what seems to be solid or commonly mentioned by several sources. So the Rey and Kylo fight, which we all knew was coming. I mean, we had an idea that they were going to do a fight between them and they were going to meet again at some point, but we're not sure if it's going to be the actual final battle because of the impending doom that Palpatine or whoever the enemies are supposed to be from the beyond coming into the galaxy could give Kylo. Obviously, Kylo is the supreme leader of the First Order, and from what we understand, they're heavily in control in this film. So, you know, could it be one of those things where it ends up being that Kylo has to, midway through the film, work with Rey to take out that bigger enemy? And what does that mean for him? Is he going to die? Is he going to live? I'm sure I'll have more discussions on that later on, you know, in the year as we approach the release of the film. But that being said, what do you think about this third Well, it would mostly be second because Rey and Kylo didn't really fight in Last Jedi. So this would be the second time that Rey and Kylo fight. Much bigger, much more powerful they are. Where could this go? Is Kylo Ren a master of the Force now? Is Rey a master? Maybe it's too soon to say that, but Rey is kind of a Mary Sue, so maybe she will be. Difficult to say, but I look forward to seeing the visual aspect of this, but at the same time, I am a little cautious because, you know, they might be trying to put too much in here. And I've said that before, that The Rise of Skywalker, because of the way Last Jedi left things off and the way that this movie, you know, is being done by J.J. Abrams and the stuff, the clues he's given to us in interviews, there's an awful lot going into this film. There's a lot of things happening. It may end up being a 3-hour movie. After Avengers Endgame was 3 hours and made so much money, this could also be a 3-hour film, in which case, you know what I'm saying? Like, they could maybe fit it all, but it's still going to be a lot of story. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, and I look forward to talking to y'all there. Hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't, and we'll have more movie and Star Wars videos coming. Thanks for watching.